أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to our respected viewers. This is your host Sakina Habib and welcome on Youth Matters. I would like to extend my heartfelt condolences to you all on the martyrdom anniversary of the Lady of Light, our mother, Sayyida Fatimah al-Zahra, Salamullahi alayha. As you know that we are commemorating the Ayyam Fatimiyah, it is so important to understand and analyze the lifestyle of Bibi Fatimah al-Zahra, Salamullahi alayha, and the role key examples that she sets not only just for the women, but for the men and the youth as well. And on today's program, we will be discussing about how can we learn some empowering lessons, a lifestyle of empowerment through the life of Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra, salamullahi alayha, and how can we empower the youths through her example. On today's program, I will be joined by a very esteemed guest, Sister Sayyida Mahdiya Hamir, and I would like to briefly introduce her. She is a clinical optometrist working in the NHS and private sector for over 18 years, set up international clinics in war-torn countries for underprivileged people. She's a senior member at the Zahra Trust charity. She's a presenter, lecturer, speaker, and she's a long-standing community teacher in the Madrasa and Community Hussainiya. And without much further ado, I would like to welcome Sister Sayyida on board. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Sister Sayyida, how are you today? Can you hear me, Sister Sayyida?
I can. Thank you so much for that introduction. I think we had a slight technical issue probably on my side. Thank you so much, Sister Sakina, for that introduction. I'll start. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على فاطمة وأبيها وبعلها وبنيها وسر المستودع فيها بعدد ما أحاط به علمك. I would like to extend my deepest of condolences to the holy Imam of our time, Imam Mahdi Ajalallahu Ta'ala Faraj al-Sharif, and to all our dear viewers on the Shahadat days and the mourning days of our mother, Sayyidah Fatima Salamullahi alayha. Thank you, dear sister, for this humbling opportunity. It's always a pleasure and an honor to speak about the Lady of Light, our mother, Sayyidah Fatima Salamullahi alayha.
Thanks to you, Sister Mahdiya, for taking out your precious time on today's program. And really, I would like to touch upon this very needful topic in today's time, and especially with the current ongoing situation that we are experiencing and facing right now. I think right now we're living in that daunting era where we are really afraid of what's to happen next, and we don't know what to expect and how can we really cater to this century's generation. So there's a lot of questions in the minds of parents, young mothers, teachers, a lot of our colleagues and members also of the community. And so therefore, Sister Sayeda, when we are looking into unprecedented and challenging times today, how can we draw inspiration from the life of our mother, Sayyida Fatimah al-Zahra, salamullahi alayha, in trying to basically attain hope in the journey of collective healing?
Sure. So the salawat that I started off with, Allahumma salli ala Fatimata wa abiha wa ba'liha wa baniha wa sirril mustawda'i fiha bi adadi ma ahata bihi ilmuka. This is a very simple salawat that we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're saying, oh Allah, please send your blessings on Sayyidah Fatima, on her father, our beloved Prophet Muhammad, on her husband Imam Ali alayhi salam, and on her two sons Hassanain alayhim salam, through the wisdom, through the knowledge that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bestowed and instilled in Fatima, our mother, the mother of the Imams, the Lady of Light. And in these uncertain times and in these times of difficulty that we are going through, where we are longing and waiting for the reappearance of our Imam, this is just a very small dua, a very small salawat that we can recite, and it has huge merits and it has huge benefits for us as well. Narrations tell us that if we recite this salawat 535 times daily, or as many times as we can, in these times of uncertainty where we are perhaps confused as to what we can do to help others around us who are suffering, or whatever suffering that, whatever trials that we are going through in our life, this is a very small salawat that we can recite to help us, to help those around us, and even for shifa as well. Now, to answer your question, there's so much that we can learn from Fatima salamullahi alayha. Hadith and narrations tell us that she lived a very short life of 18-19 years. The shahadat of Sayyidah Fatima salamullahi alayha took place very close after the shahadat of her beloved Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. Some narrations say 75 years, some narrations say 75 days, some narrations say 95 days. Whatever the hadith is, the time and the morning between the death of our beloved Prophet and the death of Sayyidah Fatima salamullahi alayha, the shahadat, that is the time of Ayam Fatimiyah. These are the days of sorrow, and these days are equivalent and no less than the days of Muharram, than the days of Ashura as well. We are, of course, mourning the loss of our mother, not just for ourselves, but the whole of the ummah as well. Now, if you look at her life, she was not just a role model for us women. She was a role model for men, for women, especially for our youth in these uncertain times that we are going through today. She was a perfect example of a mother. She was a perfect example of a wife, and she was a perfect example of a daughter as well. Simple things. If we look at, for example, the events of Mubahila, where she represented the Muslims against the Christians, where she stood up for politics. She went there with her father, our beloved Prophet Muhammad. She went there with her husband, Imam Ali alayhi salam, and her two sons, Hassanain alayhi salam. She was setting an example and a precedent to her two daughters, Sayyidah Zainab and Sayyidah Kulthum, but also to the ummah at the time and to us as a lesson, to never face down from politics, to never face down from standing up for what is right. After the shahadat of her beloved father, our beloved Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, after his shahadat, we know the events of Saqifa took place. We know that the imamat of Imam Ali alayhi salam was taken away from him. The rightful rulership and the rightful leadership of Imam Ali alayhi salam was taken away. We know the events of the door. Sayyidah Fatima salamullahi alayha was crushed behind the door. We know that she was not just protecting Imam Ali alayhi salam, but she was also protecting who was her husband, but also the rightful Imam, her Imam, the Imamat, she was protecting him. As a result, she got crushed behind the door. As a result, we know about the bruises on her body, the broken ribs, the shahadat of Hazrat Mohsin alayhi salam. But we also learn a very important lesson of strength from her, because after that event, we also know that she stood up and fought for the right of Fadak. Fadak was a very fertile land that was gifted to Sayyidah Fatima salamullahi alayha by her father in his lifetime. It was a gift to her. When that gift was taken away from her, she fought back. She never stood down. She never stood down in the face of oppression. She fought back for that gift. Even though she was injured, her ribs had been broken, she stood up for her rights. And if we look at the sermon of Fadak, there's a lot that we can analyze. And, just for time constraints, I'll just pick up and highlight on a few important parts. She starts off by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the good times and the bad. She says thank you to Allah in the good and the trials as well. And this is something that we can see how Sayyidah Zainab echoes Sayyidah Fatima in the courtyard of Yazid in Sham and in Kufa as well. She sends blessings upon our beloved Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. And then she prays for the ummah. And I'll read out a very small extract. And she says, faith has been set to those to cleanse you. Salah has been prescribed to you to keep you away from pride. Zakat has been prescribed to purify oneself. Fasting has been prescribed so genuineness may be reinforced in you. Hajj is prescribed to establish religion. It is obligatory upon all of us, the whole ummah, to follow in the footsteps of the Ahlul Bayt, and Imama is there to eradicate confusion amongst the people. So in this sermon of Fadak, she's teaching us lessons. She's teaching us not just to stand up for our rights, not just to stand up against oppression. And we look at, as a practical term, we look at the events which are happening around the world, and we have a look at, lands which are occupied and areas where everywhere we turn there's oppression, people are suffering, there's poverty, there's needy. One of the first lands that was occupied was actually the land of Fadak. And that land of Fadak was not given back to the Ahlul Bayt for over 120, 130 years after it was originally taken. So that land of Fadak only came back to the Ahlul Bayt in the times of the 8th Imam. So you can imagine how much the Ahlul Bayt alayhum as-salam have been oppressed. They are the first ones who have faced oppression. So if we look at the oppression now in our daily lives around us, we gain strength and we gain knowledge and we gain inspiration from those who have gone through it before us. And we look at practical ways where we can reform ourselves. Everyone has a jihad that they have to go through. Everyone has the jihad of one's inner nafs. The jihad of one's inner self is greater than the jihad on the battlefield. We can't physically be there to help the oppressed people because of restrictions, but we can help them with charity. We can help them with collective du'as, and we can help them with reforming ourselves. We know that the Imam of our time, Imam Mahdi Ajalallahu Ta'ala Farajah Sharif, is that rightful leader who says that I will fill the earth with justice, just as it has been filled with injustice and tyranny. And we look at a very small example of charity where we learn from our mother, Sayyidah Fatimah. We all know the story, but a brief reminder for all our viewers. When Hassanain alayhum as-salam were unwell, and our beloved Prophet had given the advice of Sayyidah Fatima to keep a nazar, to fast for 3 days. And the whole family collectively fasted for 3 days. Imam Ali, Bibi Fizza, Sayyidah Fatima, and Hassanain alayhum as-salam fasted. And on the first day, there was a knock on the door and there was a needy at the time of iftar. At the second, there was an orphan, and on the third day, there was a prisoner. And they gave away their iftar, and they gave away their food. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loved that act of charity and that act of submissiveness only to Allah, that He revealed in the Holy Quran in Surah Ad-Dahr verse 7, where He says, they fulfill vow and fear a day, the evil of which shall be spreading far and wide. And if we look around us now, there is so much oppression and there's so much needy people around the world, that again I come back to those who have been oppressed before us, which is our beloved Ahlul Bayt alayhum as-salam. And these simple examples from Sayyidah Fatima's life, never to back down in the face of charity, never to back down in the face of pressure, in politics, in oppression, just simple things that we can instill practically into our daily lives, where we can learn from our mother and from our Ahlul Bayt alayhum as-salam.
Absolutely, Sister Mehdia. When you were mentioning about the power of dua, and the fact that we should help out by giving out charity and all these things, it really makes a huge difference, I feel. Even yesterday there was this program of collective healing, and we had a live audience. There was a sister who got really emotional during that session. And she raised this point by saying that, the fact that, okay, we are seeing a lot of oppression, and, these are the same people who are being oppressed, but at the same time, because, when we're living in the West and everything, at the same time, we are the same people who get to be discriminated. The fact that we are already oppressed, and on top of it, we're also discriminated because, around the world, everybody thinks that we are the ones who are actually committing the crimes and we are on the wrong side, when actually that's not the case. And again, she brought this point that, it reminds us of those times when Imam Hussein alayhi salam had called out on the fields of Karbala that Hal min Nasirin Yansurana, is there anybody really out there to help us? And when we see the people who are suffering right now in Gaza and in Palestine, like they're really calling out for help, and it's so sad to see that we can't really do much, like we can't be there physically to help them out. And there are some countries around the world who are blinding themselves, deafening themselves on attending to their calls. And it really, really breaks our hearts. And, people do question, Sister Mahdiya, especially the youth, that where is our awaited savior, Imam al-Mahdi, Ajallahu Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif, in these daunting times? So firstly, what can one answer to that? And secondly, what are some obstacles that we can avoid to hasten his reappearance instead?
This is a very common question that not just the youth, but also believers of all ages ask, where is our awaited Imam? And we know that, like I read out the hadith, he is the one that will fill this earth with justice, just as it has been filled with injustice and tyranny. But we also know that we need to act practically. And there's a beautiful hadith by our beloved sixth Imam, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, who says that the believers during the time of the ghaiba of Imam Zamana will be one of the strongest of believers. And they are those believers who have been blessed the most by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because they are believing even though they cannot see their Imam physically. And Imam Sadiq alayhi salam describes the belief of that believer during the time of ghaiba as the adherence of faith is so hard, as if we are dragging our hands against a stem which is filled with thorns. Now imagine the pain that you would go through if you were to hold just a flower or a thorn in your hand. Imagine dragging your hand against a stem which is full of thorns. That's the kind of pain that a believer is going in the eyes of Imam, how he describes it. That's how the pain that our believers are going through. But the merit from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is so great, where our sixth Imam also says that we are amongst the highest of believers, because we are the closest of believers, because we are believing our imam, in our Imam, even though we can't see him. And the fourth Imam, our fourth holy Imam, Imam Sajjad alayhi salam, has said that the believers during the time of the ghaiba of Imam are so close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from all of the times. So you have believers from throughout the history, throughout 1400 years, all of the times and all of the eras, all of those believers, we are amongst those highest ranked in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because we are believing in our Imam even though we can't see him. And Imam Sadiq alayhi salam also says that if we as a believer, if we die in the time where we are awaiting for the reappearance of our awaited Imam, in intidhar, in waiting for him, in actively waiting for his reappearance, if we die in that time, then it is as if we have died a death where we have died as a shaheed with our Imam. And other narrations say that it's as if we have died a death of shahadat alongside our beloved Prophet Muhammad in the Battle of Badr and Uhud. This is the merits of us right now. We question and we say, where is our Imam? There is so much happening around the world, but we don't also realize that being steadfast on the right path, believing, actively focusing on how we can better ourselves, is only bringing us closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, and is multiplying our reward 10 times. Now, to answer the second part of your question, how can we hasten the reappearance of our Imam? We have to think practically. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us a free mind. He's given us a free will. He's given us aql and knowledge to be able to think practically as well. We know that when Imam Zamana reappears, he will have 313 core male generals. And we know that he will also have 50 female generals. Underneath those 313 males, there will be a vast army of thousands of males. And under those 50 core female generals, there will also be an army of other thousands of women. So as women, sometimes we doubt and we think, how can we be there to serve Imam? How can we be there to help Imam? If we actually understand that Imam is in need of males and females as well. And the females, if we look at the females, history and narrations tell us that out of those 50, 13 have already been chosen. So there's space for 37 other generals. And even if we don't make it to the general level, we can be under those generals. Now we have to think practically that in order for Imam to reappear, we also need to change ourselves. Are we educating ourselves? Are we reading up on our Imam? Are we educating ourselves so that we can educate others around us? We can educate the youth? Have we thought about how we are within ourselves? What is our faith like? What is our Iman like? Are we doing everything sincerely? Is our ikhlas only for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Do we actually know our religion? Do we read the Holy Quran daily? Do we recite it? Do we act upon the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim assalam? Remember, our beloved Prophet said that the Holy Quran and the Ahlul Bayt alayhim assalam will not be separated. Do we adhere to their teachings? Are we educating ourselves and educating others? Are we helping within the community? Are we giving charity? These are all the things that we need to better within ourselves. If we purify ourselves, if we stay away from those acts which we are doing, which are taking us away from the Ahlul Bayt alayhim assalam, this all hastens the reappearance of our Imam. And a very practical tip that we can give is forming a close relationship and a close bond with the Imam of our time. And what I mean by that is reciting du'as daily for him. Now, Imam is not in need of our du'as. We are in need of his du'as. So when we recite daily, when we recite du'a faraj, for example, simple du'as, we are asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to prolong Imam's life. We're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless our Imam, to keep him and to hasten his reappearance. And by reciting du'as and praying for the Imam of our time, that benefits us. He prays for us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there's numerous hadith and numerous narrations, but if I pinpoint just a few, the Imam prays for us if we pray for him. If we remember him daily, he remembers us more. If we remember Imam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also speedens up the rate at how quickly our hajat are answered by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He hastens the reappearance of Imam, and he also blesses us with rizq and barakah as well. So this praying for Imam, practically making a niyat to have a better interaction with your Imam, is not just helping you, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is also listening to our du'as and hastening his reappearance. Even simple things like, for example, we emphasize on going for ziyarat and going to visit the holy shrines. Do we recite the ziyarat of Imam Zamana? Do we send our salams to our Imam daily? Do we recite his ziyarat Ali Yasin? Do we recite Dua Ahad on a Friday and pledge our allegiance? Do we recite or listen, even listening to du'as, Dua Nudba, it's beautiful dua. Listen to it in your home on a Friday. All of this is practically getting us closer to the Imam. And simple things, every good act that you do, dedicate that as a gift to your Imam. This not only builds up a relationship between you and your Imam, it sends blessings in your home, and it prepares you mentally and spiritually, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hastens the reappearance of our awaited Imam, inshallah.
I think you've touched a really beautiful point here, and with reference to whatever you've mentioned, I just want to put out and recall something very important about what Marhum Sayyid Asad Jafari had mentioned. I think it was in one of his majalises or a clip that was shared that went very viral, and it was this amazing concept that if I want to be, in the Lashkar, in the army of Imam Zamana, do I really have to be, in that 313 category? And as you mentioned, that the ladies are, 50, and so we would ask ourselves that, okay, that's a really small number. How can I even fit in that category? And he said that, look at me. like I make this really amazing cheese omelet, right? Like it's the best cheese omelet that I make. So if I even get that chance to make this omelet and serve it to the soldiers of Imam al Mahdi, like I'm hands down for it. I mean, what he's trying to tell us is like each one of us has a capacity to serve. We shouldn't like underestimate ourselves that, I cannot reach to that level because I'm not maybe at that extreme level. I think each one of us, has a certain role that we can, use it to help the Imam of our time. And that's why, it is so much encouraged to seek education in different diverse areas, so that when Imam has that organization, there are youths, there are people who are available in those different diverse areas to serve the Imam. And it could be from the simple basic example that Marhum Asad Jafri mentioned, that for example, he loved doing this cooking thing. So like it's not like something that we should undervalue or underestimate, that oh, if this is the least that I can do. So people, for example, who are in the mosque who do like niyaz servings and all, even they have a very huge part that they can play, for our Imam. As you said, going to dua and nudba on Friday, just listening to the dua, understanding the meaning, talking to the Imam, it all makes a really really huge difference. We don't realize it, but it's just like golden drops of knowledge that you are taking in to become that better version. And it's really beautiful to keep that in mind. Also, when it comes to our Lady Fatima Zahra, of course, who is a highly respected figure in Islam, known for her piety, wisdom, and devotion, do we really just see Bibi Fatima as a role model for women? Or do we see her as a role model for the men as well, for the youth, for everyone? And what makes her role so special, linking her to the Imamat especially?
Yeah. So Sayyidah Fatima Salamullahi alayha, in my introduction, I said that she's that perfect example. She's the perfect role model for men. She's a perfect role model for females, for youth, for all generations, for all eras, past, present, and future. If you look at Sayyidah Fatima Salamullahi alayha and everything that she has been through, we can instill what she's been through into our lives in every category of every life, of every part of our life that we are going through. And if you link Sayyidah Fatima Salamullahi alayha to the Imamat, practically, we say that she's our mother, but we don't just say that she's our mother, she's the mother of all the Imams other than Imam Ali alayhi salam. Now, if you look at Sayyidah Fatima Salamullahi alayha, and just a little bit of history for our viewers, our beloved Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, when he was at the time, this is before Sayyidah Fatima Salamullahi alayha was born, he was mocked and he was called Abdar, which means when, for example, the animal of a tail is cut off, they would say Abdar. They would say his lineage has cut off. They would mock him. They would make fun of him. And of course, this saddened our beloved Prophet. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed in the Holy Quran in Surah Kawthar, where he says, Inna a'atayna kal Kawthar, and he describes Sayyidah Fatima salamullahi alayha as abundance. He says she is that gift of abundance. Abundance is something that keeps on multiplying, keeps on multiplying. She is that gift, that blessing to our beloved Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. And he says, indeed, we have granted you Kawthar, which is abundant goodness. So pray and sacrifice to your Lord alone. Only those who hate you are truly from the wrongdoers. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed our beloved Prophet Muhammad with Sayyidah Fatima salamullahi alayha. She is that gift, not just to us, not just to the whole of mankind, but to the Imams as well. So from Sayyidah Fatima salamullahi alayha came, and through Sayyidah Fatima and Imam Ali alayhi salam came the rest of the Imams until our awaited Imam, Imam Mahdi ajalallahu ta'ala Faraja Sharif. So much so that the Imams, our awaited Imams, one of his most beloved titles is called Yabna Zahra, the daughter of Zahra. His mother he called Zahra. So Sayyidah Fatima salamullahi alayha is the mother of all Imams, and she is all our mother. And our beloved Prophet Muhammad and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loved Sayyidah Fatima salamullahi alayha so much that our beloved Prophet Muhammad would say that whoever pleases Fatima pleases Allah. Whoever angers Fatima angers Allah. And practically in these times of Ayam Fatimiyah, when we are commemorating her shahadat, even the smallest act of goodness that we can do, and what one of my teachers taught me is, any act of goodness that you do, dedicate that to your Ahlul Bayt. But to increase the merit and the blessings of that goodness, dedicate any, it might be a small simple niyaz that you've done and you've given that to your family members. That niyaz, make that your niyat, that niyaz I am doing on behalf of my Imam Mahdi Ajalallahu Ta'ala Faraj Sharif, as a gift to his mother, Sayyidah Fatima Salamullahi Alayha. Not only are you getting the thawab, you are also dedicating that thawab to the Imam of our time, to his mother, Sayyidah Fatima, to our mother, Sayyidah Fatima. If we look at the merits of Sayyidah Fatima, we will never have enough time. Just small practical tips, that she's there as our shafa'ah, as our intercession in this life, in our barzakh, in our akhirah. And if we hold on to her light, if we hold on to our nur, and if we teach our children that in any trial or any test, in the good times and the bad, have a very practical, open relationship with Sayyidah Fatima, and she will never ever let us down, inshallah.
Inshallah. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sister Mahdiya, for this. That was really inspirational. I think I would personally even take a lot of lessons from that. It is so true. Sometimes we just, tend to get so carried away in this materialistic world, and we forget that, our Imams are present, Bibi Fatima is present, Imam Zamana is present, and we should really talk to them, ask them for help, and as you said, dedicate the hadiyas to them. It really helps out a lot. Sister Mahdiya, are there any examples that we can use to foster our personal growth and development as youths, aligning holistically with the lifestyle of Bibi Fatima and Imam Ali alayhi salam?
Sure. I just want to read out, before I answer this question, I just want to read out a very small part from the Holy Quran, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Hud in ayah 115 has said, "And be patient, for indeed Allah does not allow to be lost the reward of those who do good." Now, in these times where we look upon us and we see there is so much suffering around the world, there is so much oppression, we take inspiration from the life of Sayyidah Fatima Salamullahi Alayha, and we try and instill that into our lives so that we can practically become better ourselves. If we look at their lives, Sayyidah Fatima and Imam Ali alayhi salam, they lived a very simple life. They were cousins, as we know, but also they grew up around the same infallibles. Imam Ali alayhi salam grew up in the lap of our beloved Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, who grew up around Sayyidah Khadija salamullahi alayha. And of course, Sayyidah Khadija and our beloved Prophet Muhammad was the mother and father of Sayyidah Fatima. So Sayyidah Fatima and Imam Ali alayhi salam, they had this beautiful relationship. They had this beautiful marriage, which was a perfect marriage. Just like the marriage of Sayyidah Khadija and our beloved Prophet Muhammad, the marriage of Sayyidah Fatima and Imam Ali alayhi salam was that perfect example of harmony. Imam Ali alayhi salam would always say that whenever I looked at the face of Sayyidah Fatima salamullahi alayha, all my worries and all my troubles and sorrows would disappear. So if we look at the society that we live in now, we live in a very fast-paced society where social media is at our fingertips, at the fingertips of our youth, and we're more concerned about how many followers we may have or how popular we are on social media, rather than looking at the lives of our Ahlul Bayt alayhim assalam and taking them as our role models and taking them as the perfect examples as to how we should better our lives. Simple aspects, for example, we're so involved in materialism, and if there's anything that the events of the last few weeks or the last few months, or generally if we look around us and there's so much oppression and needy and poverty around us, that we know that this life is transient. We know that we are here today, we are gone tomorrow. This life is very short, yet we are living this on this earth as if we're here forever. We are concentrating too much on materialism. If we look at the simple aspect of charity, on the wedding night of Sayyidah Fatima salamullahi alayha, she gave away her wedding dress. Narrations tell us that there was a needy person, a knock on the door, and she gave away her wedding dress. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loved that act of complete submissiveness only to him. That narrations tell us, hadith tells us, that Angel Jibreel brought a dress from the heavens for Sayyidah Fatima salamullahi alayha. Even if you look at the marriage between Sayyidah Fatima salamullahi alayha and Imam Ali alayhi salam, it was a very simple marriage. It was not lavish, it was not overly done, yet they did the mustahab act of feeding the people. Those who were invited to the wedding, everyone was fed after the nikah. If you look at even the dowry of Sayyidah Fatima salamullahi alayha, when Imam Ali alayhi salam sent the proposal for Sayyidah Fatima through our beloved Prophet Muhammad, our beloved Prophet Muhammad asked Imam Ali, what is it that you can gift Fatima? And he said, I live a very simple life. He said, I have a shield, I have a horse, some narrations say donkey, and I have a sword. And our beloved Prophet Muhammad says, as for the horse, keep that. You will need that to earn an honest living. As for the sword, keep that. You will need that to protect Islam. But as for your shield, your armor, sell that. And from that came the dowry of our beloved Sayyidah Fatima salamullahi alayha, from Imam Ali to Sayyidah Fatima. Even their home was very simple. There's a few pots and pans, narrations tell us. There was a mattress for sleeping on. It was not this lavish lifestyle that they lived in. They could. No, she was the daughter of our beloved Prophet Muhammad. She's the lady of light. She's the best of women. He's the Imam. He's the lion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They could have lived a lavish lifestyle. They chose not to. They were humble. They gave to others before they even ate food within their own homes. There's been narrations tell us that sometimes Imam Ali alayhi salam would be walking home and a needy person would come to him asking for food, and he would give it away, and they would have little to eat in their house. Imam Ali alayhi salam, we know, is the father of the orphans. In fact, in his will and his last final words to his sons, Hassanain alayhi salam, the last few words he said to them was, do not forget the plight of the orphans. And it is Imam himself who has said, do not feel ashamed if the amount of charity you give is little, for to refuse the needy is an act of greater shame. So when we are looking around us now, when we are seeing so much oppression, let us not forget to give to those who need our help practically, where we can practically reform ourselves, but charity, sadaqah, and go one step forward. Give that sadaqah in the name of Imam Zamana, in the name of Sayyidah Fatima salamullahi alayha, and that will help us in our daily lives. Imam Ali alayhi salam and Sayyidah Fatima salamullahi alayha was so close, to the fact where our beloved Imam would, when he would look upon Sayyidah Fatima salamullahi alayha's face, he would say, all my sorrows and worries would disappear. And when he was burying Sayyidah Fatima salamullahi alayha, at the time where he was burying her, he says, my sorrows are now eternal and my nights will be sleepless until the time that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes me to the home that you are now living in. He loved Sayyidah Fatima salamullahi alayha so much, and in the weeping and in the lamenting, he fell asleep on her grave, and then in his dream, we know narrations tell us that Sayyidah Fatima salamullahi alayha comes in his dream and says, go back to your children, go back to the home where Hassanain alayhim salam are waiting, where Sayyidah Zainab is waiting, where Sayyidah Kulthum is waiting. We look around our lives right now and we are so concerned often about our image, how we look, how much money we have, are we wearing the right clothes? We forget that this life is very limited. And if anything, if the events around the world have not taught us much, then just remember that life is so short and we don't know how long we are living on this earth for. We pray that we live a life full of servitude. We pray that we live a life only for pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and serving our beloved Ahlul Bayt alayhum assalam. And we pray that we are amongst those that can serve our Imam. We are amongst those that can be there when our Imam reappears, and that action starts now. Practically, we need to reform ourselves today, and that starts with the little steps that we have spoken about today, and not just ourselves, but for our children as well, for our homes, so that we can be amongst our Imam's helpers in his team, and we can speed up the hastening of his reappearance as well, inshallah.
Thank you so much, inshallah. And sister, once again, I would like to humbly thank you for joining today, for taking out your precious time and for inspiring us with, your amazing knowledge. I really want to thank you, Sister Mahdiya, for today's program. Jazakallah.
Thank you. No, thank you, Sister Sakina, for the humbling opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you to all our viewers for tuning on today's program. And I hope we have, taken a lot of inspiration and lessons and a lot of, wisdom from Sister Mahdiya on today's program. It is very true that Lady Fatima is considered to be a really magnanimous personality. She was someone who had a lot of moral excellence and talents, and she really was a very prominent person during her lifetime, which was of course very short, but even in that span of lifetime, she really left for us this huge legacy that we should really ponder upon today. Once again, I would like to thank all our viewers for tuning on today's program. Please do make sure that you do give us feedback on our program. Do like and share our program. And inshallah, I'll be seeing you again in the next episode. Thank you. This is your host, Sakina Habib, signing off. Jazakumullahu khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.